So I thought this is just almost poetically interesting here. You think about implications of it. So why would somebody buy? It's easy for us to dismiss them as just kind of unsophisticated companies with lots of cash who think that they should do that. But in fact, if you think of the Hummer brand, it is an interesting brand. If you're paying whatever it is, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 for a Hummer, you're not really competing with Camry or Prius. People who buy it, I would venture to say that they don't really give a whole lot about whether the gas is $3 or $6. They can afford it. More of it is a niche market, and that niche market is going to exist. So why give it up? It's a great brand for those who like it. Just like anything else, you're not selling efficiency. You're selling an image. Somebody who drives a Hummer wants to be associated with that image. And given that price point, they can afford it even if gas is $8, I assure you. So it showed not so much from the business point of view whether that was the right decision or not, but to me, the attitude was interesting. Here GM is saying, get rid of this. And Chinese saying, we'll take it. This is what we can do in the future. So I thought that was really an interesting combination of events that's going on, and it really highlights to me what the emerging economies are going to do and their important role in the coming 2 or 3 decades for us. So let me move on to the third point that I have here, and that's the kind of the changing media, commerce, advertising world. Lots of this is what my team and I, of which Marfisa here was a great help with also, put together a couple of years ago under the title of User Revolution. And you've heard most of these things. Even back then, it wasn't really totally new ideas. It was the compilation, the conclusion we're taking. But of course, people are watching many different channels and different kinds of media, and they're not impacted as much by direct advertisement. But what really is key in here to me is that the consumer has become very sophisticated. And the old model, one of the best models that we were all taught in business schools was the razor model. Give them away the razor, sell them the blades. Nothing wrong with that. It seems to make perfect sense. What I want to tell you today that model is dead. People are upset when they get a printer, for example, for which they have to buy $30 cartridges from Dell, and they can't refill the cartridges. So there are many of those companies still around. But there are many more that are forming. The Googles and Apples of the world and others are saying things have to be open, and you have to really respect the customer and give them what they want. And that has really given a lot of confidence to consumers who didn't know any better before, but now they can Google things, they can search for what they want, they can find what they're looking for, they can put together the best deals. I mean, think about it, I gave you a travel example. The reason some of the travel prices have been coming down is because people have become very sophisticated. They know how to put together a combination of things that will save them more than a package. So I think all of those things excuse me, are really changing the way that commerce was done, and it will change the way advertising is done and marketing. The last point I want to make is really relevant and in some ways ties everything else together. And that is the new way to reach this customer who is now savvy and sophisticated is to make things easy and simple. I've been thinking about this notion for the past few years actually, and some of it was reflected in our work at User Revolution, but it really came to light when a few years ago I was listening to Evan Williams, the founder of Twitter, talk. And he said, you know what, sometimes less is not just beautiful, it's more powerful. And he gave some examples. Of course, one of them was Google, which has always been a fairly boring page, but it's an extremely effective. And in this case, of course, those of you who are familiar with Twitter, and I assume most are, is a fairly limited tool. Now it's called micro-blogging. So it limits as to what you do. It doesn't give you all the options, but it's useful. This concept of what you can use versus the choices you have is an important concept. Google has been at it for ages. People don't know about it, but there are actually people who only focus on this. What will happen if you put one more option on the page which will let people do what they want? Well, it will give them more choices, but it will confuse them possibly, and they take it out. That is a very important concept. And again, it used to be something, if at all people paid attention to, it was something that you would pay attention to for things that are useful for seniors or others. But it's coming to become accepted that this is the useful way, a more efficient way to do things. I'll give you the most basic example of it. Fonts. Look at the websites. How many of them, even the younger ones, or those with a perfect vision, how many of them you can read easily? Look at this website of most of the companies. They're pretty if you look at it, but a website isn't a painting. It's a way for you to interact with them. I challenge you to go to any of the ad agencies, in fact, the worst ones, to go to any ad agency website, and then go to, let's say, mint.com. Mint is a financial website that collects information from all their accounts, put them together. It is not targeted necessarily at any age group. It's mostly targeted, I guess, at slightly higher end of income. But it's a perfect example. I've given this to, I've invested in a company in India that does something comparable, and I told them, take a look at this. This is how things should be, because it's easy to do. And again, coming back to this, one of the reasons that I believe this is really useful is because it uses big, clear fonts. It's easy to read. It doesn't use any gimmickry. This might seem a small thing to do, but trust me, it is not. It's the tip of the iceberg of what is going to happen. Let's call it, to make it a bit flairful, the revolution of simplicity. Simple things that work well are going to be the things that are going to be successful.
That's true.
And that really comes down to from one view, and that is, especially in consumer electronics, the manufacturers have to change the view, which oftentimes, despite all the research, comes from what I would call the engineer's worldview. Things that could be clever, you know, if you push this button 3 times and combine it with this button 2 times, then you get what you want. It's very clever that they can design that, but I don't give much effect to that. I like to have one button that does what I want. So from that engineer's view to the consumer's view, in other words, you basically come to kind of respect the customer. That is the key message that I think successful companies are following, and everyone needs to follow. And if you follow that in all areas that we talked about, not just in new products, in terms of advertising, in terms of the global village that we see, in terms of the generations, you will see that we don't need to really categorize people based on their age. Sure, boomer market is huge, but let's look at what they need rather than what they define by their age. And the same thing happens to, I think, all the demographics and all the countries that we see. That it is this interesting intersection of all these things that are coming through together. The accessibility that the internet has given us, the emergence of a sophisticated consumer, and the fact that finally we're seeing simplicity starting to win is what I thought would be a useful thing to share with you as the new era that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for us. So that's really all I want to share with you. I'm happy to kind of go back and forth if you have some thoughts or questions and entertain us. Thanks.